April 18th, 2017 meeting of the Ethics Board for the City of Tallahassee. You have in front of you the minutes from the last meeting. Does anybody have any questions or corrections on the minutes?
Move the minutes as submitted.
Okay, Ms. Phillips moves and Mr. Davis seconds. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The minutes are approved. The next item is the Ethics Officer Report. If you would do the three pieces, and we'll stop at the end of each piece. Ms. Meadows-Keefe.
Yes, Mr. Chair. In front of you is the usual monthly report that's prepared to update the board between meetings on my activities. So you'll see those noted below. I did additional educational sessions this last month. They are noted there for your review. So there were 4 educational sessions to employees, and then there were also two community boards and advisory committees.
Okay, any questions on this first memorandum? Okay, Ms. Meadows-Keefe, if you would move to the hotline.
Okay, on the hotline, there were only 2 inquiries this month that were noted, and those are there for you to review, and the recommendation that I'm making is that we close those.
Okay, any questions or comments for Ms. Meadows-Keefe? I'm going to tell you my personal position on both of these is I'm okay with closing them in terms of being violations of the current city ethics ordinance. However, I would like to put both of them on our list for the next time that we make recommendations for to the City Commission in terms of amending the city ethics ordinance, because I think the process we just went through November through January of looking at issues, I think both of these would be issues that would be valuable for us to discuss in the future as improvements to either the ethics ordinance or to the policies of the city. So people are okay with, okay, so Ms. Phillips is going to move that we follow your recommendation to close these as violations, and then we're going to, added to that would be the addition of both items to our next review for a recommendation to the City Commission. Mr. Davis seconds. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay, and that's approved. And Ms. Meadows-Keefe, you are on our budget sheet. Anything here of any great pith and moment?
No, not this month. We had talked last month about the budget for next year, and I noted Ms. McNeil's suggestion that we do a trend analysis next year. But we're going to go with recapitulating basically this budget for the upcoming fiscal year and reevaluate in the following.
Okay, and when you say redoing this budget, can you tell us where we are in the process with the City Commission and the budget, and they're building a budget which would include us?
Yes, they are. As you know, by terms of the charter amendment, the Independent Ethics Board is funded through general revenue provided by the taxpayers of the City of Tallahassee. So we follow the city's budget process. So they are in preliminary workshops to talk about those things, and we'll continue to participate in those workshops. And as questions may come up from commission or from city staff, I'll work with them to facilitate our budget for the upcoming fiscal year.
So the city's fiscal year would be October 1 through September 30, so there's some time until they have to make final decisions. But does anybody have any concerns with us just recommending continuation at the current funded level?
I just have a question. So on campaign refunds, we've spent $163. And when are the next elections? It's not for another year?
Okay.
Why do we want to continue that 30,000 for next year?
Ms. Phillips, I think you want to pull that microphone a little bit closer to you. I think I was seeing some indication in the audience they couldn't hear you. But your question was, why would we need to continue the funding for the following year, fiscal year, if there's no elections? I do believe that 2 commissioners are up for reelection in 2018. I know Commissioner Miller is, and I think one other commissioner, I think Commissioner Ziffer. So they may start fundraising during this next upcoming fiscal year. So I would want to keep that funding rather than not have the line item and then have to reapproach based on questions that there were this first time we ran it. I don't want to get rid of that money.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, so we'll have a chance to readdress the issue of our budget in future meetings, but for the moment, we're going to kind of stay the course on that one.
And Mr. Chair, what I will do as documents are prepared during the budget process, I'll put them as part of the agenda so the board can remain up to date on everything we're doing.
Okay, outstanding. We would go to our ethics moment.
Yes, and this one is quick, and it relates to the legislative session. As I'm sure you know from the past ethics moments we've had in the last few months, particularly the House is focused on a lot of ethics reform this year, and they are particularly focused on local officials. The county folks file the more detailed financial disclosure. They want to now attach that to the municipal officials. There are 2 bills in the House related to that. And also expanding the wait period from when you leave a position and when you can lobby. So it's now 2 years. They want to make that 6 years. That measure passed the House 108-4. It is now in a Senate Ethics and Election Committee. And then there's also some legislation that's gone forward from the House on, again, it's the Form 6 to Form 1. So Form 6 is the more enhanced disclosure requirement. And that is for municipalities that have more than $10 million in revenue for 3 consecutive years. So the city will obviously fall into that category. And so again, that's passed the House 114-1. That's also in the Senate Ethics and Elections Committee. And those are the ones that impact local government.
Okay, and just for a little bit of additional information, the fact that these House bills don't have Senate companions, and we are now in the middle of week 7 of a 9-week legislative session, means that and they would have to be heard in Senate committees, which are nearing the end of their meetings. Just makes it tough. But all of these issues, if they don't pass this year, I am certain that we will see them again. So good for us to be aware of in any case.
Right.
Now, kind of going back to Ms. Phillips' question, you have our campaign contribution refund program closeout report, which we will need to send to the City Commission pretty soon. Absolutely,
and that is the next agenda item that you have. It's agenda item 6. We're moving nice and fast. The charter amendment does require that the board report back to the City Commission on the refund program and provide them a summary report So I have provided for you a draft letter to the mayor and city commission. And again, by the charter amendment, we are required to show them the total number and aggregate amount of political contribution refunds made on behalf of each candidate. And then attached to that letter is actually the spreadsheet that documents that, separated out for fiscal year 2016 and then for fiscal year 2017. So in fiscal year 2016, we paid out a total of $465. It looks like in the fiscal year 2017, we paid $163 for a total of $628. Down at the bottom of your spreadsheet, we've provided the required breakdown of candidates and their contributors who received donations and refunds.
Okay, and one clarification. We don't pay these. What we do is certify the applications for refund to the city treasurer.
Yeah.
And they actually cut the checks.
So for, again, since we have two new board members, the way the process works is that we approved a form pretty early on in the board's existence, and the voter contributor provides the form and a copy of the receipt. Our office validates that by looking at supervisor of election information as well as the receipt provided by the candidate and the form. If that's all in good order, we provide that to the treasurer clerk, and the treasurer clerk will then issue that voter a refund from general revenue. And again, this was part of the charter amendment that created this board. So we have that task.
Okay. Any questions on this draft report that we'll be sending to the City Commission within the next couple days? Pretty straightforward, I believe. Okay. I know that I skipped over agenda item number 5, public comment on agenda items. What I'm going to do is I have one card on public comment on non-agenda items, so I'll recognize anybody on either agenda or non-agenda items at this point, because we're going to take, as soon as we do this, we're going to go into our shade meeting, and I just wanted to make sure that we got you in ahead. So first, Mr. Butzine, and then anyone else who'd like to speak.
Thank you. My name is Peter Butzine. I'm here representing Common Cause and also the Coalition for Ethics Reform. First off, I want to thank you for taking action to have the entire board make final determination regarding the handling of all complaints, including those that may be beyond the board's jurisdiction or those which may be legally insufficient. I think that's an important step that we support. And I also wish to thank Brian Smith and Bruce Grant for their commitment to serve on this board as its two most recent members. We welcome you. But primarily what I'd like to do today is address Mr. Currington's finding that this board does not have the authority to investigate and determine findings relating to misuse of public position. Now, first off, I should say I am not a lawyer, but I think common sense suggests that there's a compelling relationship between misusing public position and ethics violations. And let me speak specifically to what I consider the elephant in the room. The Tallahassee Democrat has reported that our mayor apparently purchased voting software for his gubernatorial campaign using the city's mayoral account, and then used that software to email potential donors and supporters for his gubernatorial campaign. Now, lawyers can quibble over definitions of misuse of public position and conflicts of interest, but it's pretty clear that if our mayor used public funds to purchase and then use software to support his bid for statewide office, he should be held accountable. Now, I want to make it very clear I harbor no ill will toward the mayor. I have no political interest in this case, unlike public charges from the head of the Leon County Republican Party. I voted for him twice, once when he ran for commissioner and once when he ran for mayor. I have regarded him as an up-and-comer in local, state, and perhaps even national politics. Who knows, I may even contribute to his campaign for governor. But if the information contained in the newspaper stories is true, at a very minimum, our mayor made a stupid mistake. But in addition to making a stupid, or at least a careless mistake, I believe he has not only misused his office for public gain, but also violated even the city's astoundingly weak ethics code. And the reason for that is, included in that ethics code is an oath of office. And it states the following, that public officials will, and I quote, swear or affirm that they are committed to the public trust, the highest standards of professionalism and ethics, including a commitment to the constant appearance of propriety, always putting public trust first and never allowing personal benefit to affect decisions and service as a public servant. Now, unless I'm missing something, this should be a classic case for the board's action. My feeling is that the ethics board, if it can't work on this one, it can't ignore this case. Apparently, there's an ongoing sheriff's investigation, but I would argue that that does not absolve the Ethics Commission or Ethics Board from its responsibility to enforce our mayor's official misbehavior. Also, in my opinion, the fact that he has apologized shouldn't mean that the misconduct should be ignored. The 67% of the electorate that voted in 2014 for the creation of this board as part of the ethics initiative expect enforcement against exactly this type of behavior. And then one last point. If Mr. Currington is correct that the city's current, and I'd call it a feel-good ethics code, doesn't have the teeth to initiate such a basic complaint, then the Citizen Ethics Coalition wants to work strongly with this board to develop an enforceable ordinance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Betzine. I think that most of us have seen the same articles you've referred to, and we are hopeful that our recommendations to the city that we made about a month or two ago will go at least some way down this path. One of the topics, as you know from being here at every meeting, is that we've come back numerous times to the what is or isn't in the city ethics ordinance. So.
And we stand to work closely with you to make sure that we have an enforceable ethics code for the city of Tallahassee.
Thank you, appreciate that. Anybody else want to make a public comment, agenda item or non-agenda item? If not, what we are going to do is we are going to retire to our shade meeting. I expect that it's going to take us 45 minutes, an hour. Ms. Meadows-Keefe, you want to opine?
I'm not going to opine on how long this particular process will take, because that will depend on members of this board. But I do want to explain for members of the public and those that may be watching that under the terms of the Florida Ethics Code, and I have a citation that I'm not going to read because it's very long, but in 112, if there is a complaint and an investigation that's being considered by a body such as this, which is a municipal ethics body, it is confidential and exempt from public meeting and public records law until certain conditions are met. And that is things like the complaint is dismissed as legally insufficient, the board decides it's not going to investigate, or there's a probable cause type of determination. So there's a few conditions that need to get met before the documents and the transcript of the proceeding will be made public. There will be a court reporter present at the conclusion of the meeting. There may or may not be documents available to the public, depending on the discussion that takes place. So that's just setting up what we're going to do, and unless there's anything else, Mr. Chair.
So if we reach a conclusion in the SHAE meeting, then everything becomes public. If we don't reach a conclusion and determine to continue the SHAE meeting to a future date, then it all stays in the shade.
Correct.
That's, okay. With that, we are going to, are we recessing? Are we standing? I don't know. We're going to move to the SHADE meeting, and we will return hopefully within less than an hour. City of Tallahassee Ethics Board, we are back. It is 6:06.
Mr. Davis is gone.
Yes, I'm going to do that. I would note that Mr. Davis is excused for the rest of the meeting. He had a prior commitment that actually started a little while ago that he was kind enough to stay through our meeting. We did not reach a conclusion in the meeting we just left, so we will be continuing to work on that issue. Next on our agenda is item 9, which is the opinion we got from Mr. Currington. So, Mr. Currington, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wrote an opinion on April 6, 2017. It was arguably predictable based on a prior opinion I wrote on May 2nd, 2016. In that opinion, I was asked whether the Ethics Board has the authority to enforce the state ethics code in addition to the city's ethics code. And I opined that the Ethics Board only had the authority to investigate complaints and levy those civil penalties as may be authorized by the City Commission for violation of the city's ethics code. And that came from a review of Charter Amendment Section 2, V, I. In my April 6th opinion, this is a similarly related question, whether the Ethics Board has the authority to pursue an alleged misuse of position by city officials, officers, employees, board members, and committee members. I have opined that the Ethics Board does not currently have the authority to pursue an alleged misuse of position because the city's ethics code does not address and currently does not prohibit an alleged misuse of office. Once again, you must turn to the Charter Amendment, Section 2, V, I, where, pursuant to the Charter Amendment, this board was given the authority to investigate complaints and to levy those civil penalties as may be authorized by the City Commission for the violation of the city's ethics code. I believe that to be clear and unambiguous language. I also reviewed the entire code of ethics, and which addresses financial disclosure for elected officials, lobbyist disclosure, disclosure of offers of employment, and expanded abstention provisions. That essentially is the ethics code, and it does not prohibit misuse of position. So it is my opinion today that this board does not have the authority to investigate and to impose penalties for misuse of office. If I might digress for a minute, I guess.
You're recognized.
A point of maybe personal privilege, I don't know. Mr. Butzine's comment was quite creative, I think, to cite to the loyalty oath. And it's given me pause, and I think it's given the chair pause, and I may very well be looking into that question. I will say, and I always get myself in trouble when I do this, I had read that, and I will tell you it's not that I hadn't thought about it. And we know public officials can be impeached for violating their oath of office, but that oath of office normally deals with, I shall uphold the Constitution. And so some officer didn't uphold the Constitution. But the language that I think Mr. Butzine is relying on, the public trust, highest standards of professionalism, appearance of propriety, and putting the public trust first, those are aspirational. And I don't know that you can be found guilty of not rising to an aspirational goal. But I may be looking into that further, depending on what my client advises me to do. But anyway, so that is my opinion today. And again, we have heard from the city, it's not as if there were no remedies for a misuse of office. That is prohibited by the state ethics code, so someone could complain with the State Ethics Commission. And if it were some sort of a criminal violation, if it was theft of city property or misuse of office in that sense, taking home equipment, whatever, then arguably, you know, a state attorney can get involved or whatever. So there are other enforcement authorities out there. I know I've been around this long enough to know how frustrating it is for years, there's complaints about the state ethics codes not having enough teeth. And based on my opinions, it appears the city ethics code has even fewer teeth. And I know how frustrating that must be. But as a lawyer, I give advisory opinions. If I was a judge trying to make law, I'd be accused of being a judicial activist. I don't want to be accused of being an advisory opinion activist. I have to write opinions as to what the law is, not what I would like it to be. And so, for better or worse, that's my opinion.
All right. Any questions of Mr. Currington? Seeing none, I am going to propose to the board that we ask Mr. Currington specifically to look at the issue that Mr. Butzine raised and bring us back something when he can. I know he has some travel plans and he's going to be out and about for out of the country for a while. So at his next opportunity to present us with that opinion, does any board member have any opposition to me asking Mr. Currington for that? Okay, so Mr. Currington, you are so directed. I would also note on this that there are a lot of things. I realize ethics is kind of a broad topic, something I guess you start off trying to teach your kids to be kind, be gentle, practice patience, practice kindness, whatever. But there still are boundaries. I know we've already had a situation or two that certainly has occurred to me that there was something I didn't like, but it was really an elections world and not an ethics world, and I'm not always sure where all those boundaries are, so I suspect we're going to have a lot of these discussions, or you all will have a lot of these discussions over the years. Next on the agenda is Ms. Meadows-Keefe to talk about the outline of the ethics handbook that she has been working on.
I have been, Mr. Chair, diligently working on said handbook. And I plan to work with at least one board member as I'm writing it. I actually do have a lot written. As I'm doing this, though, it occurred to me that I don't want the perfect to interfere with the good. I wanted to share with the board not only the outline for what I've already written and propose to include, but also talk about the method of presentation of said handbook. I do know there's probably a sense of urgency to get a handbook done. So that is definitely a high priority for me. And my intention is to get out a PDF, nice looking document. The auditor's office actually has a very nice production product that can be done for a relatively low amount of money. I can bring at the next meeting a copy of a sample for you to look at. But my goal for the first edition of the handbook is to get it done quickly in the next several months and have that available on a PDF for the public, and then also as a paper document that can be handed out at meetings, given to new employees, and used as a resource for citizens, maybe even at the back of city commission meetings. So that's the mission for that. Later on, my vision for it is to tie it into ethics education, to the ethics education that's presented to employees, and kind of do a whole reboot of some of that, tying it all into the handbook and then into educational materials for employees. So the handbook that we are charged with doing is one for both citizens and employees, so it is to be a document that's used by everyone. Therefore, said document must be done with simple language. So when you get to draft reviewing, you'll see that it's written to hopefully where, I don't know if my daughter could understand it at age 9, but I would hope by age 12 or 11, she might. So it's to try to simplify some of these concepts so they're comprehensible. Having said all that, I shortened our mission statement for purposes of the handbook because it's a lengthy mission statement, and I hope that the aim will be reflected there in that top quote, promoting ethics and integrity in city government. And I have included for your review just an outline and topics that are planned for inclusion in the handbook. I wanted to make sure that there are no topics that I have neglected, and I actually made notes to myself for ones I thought of before. I'm going to also put in here a section for expectations for employees. So I'm going to actually tell the public in simple terms what our policies and procedures are for ethics for our employees so citizens can know what the city expects of them. So after having reviewed this list of topics, I'm open to any that you think I have left out.
Any comments?
I'll get back with you.
Ms. Phillips will get back with you.
Okay.
Any other comments? The only thing that I would say is, in some iteration of this, I think it would be interesting to note by type of person what things apply to them, so that an elected public official, an appointed public official, an employee, a part-time employee, a contractor, a bidder, a citizen, which provisions, so that if I'm just a citizen of the city of Tallahassee and I'm not in any way affiliated with the city, I can look at this and say, oh, there might be something in here that would actually apply to me. Not that I can apply to other people, but something that applies to me. Or if I'm a bidder, that it might be an easy way to be able to point to someone who hasn't done business with government before to say, oh, don't forget these things and you're going to be subject to these things, so that categories of people could look, just as a kind of a cross hatch of this would be interesting to me.
And to respond to that, I would say that that is a great suggestion that I hadn't thought of, that what we expect from our contractors, from our part-time employees, and for people that seek in the future to do business with the city, so they could know about that. And then also maybe if they're even thinking of running for office, what you'd have to do as a candidate to avoid ethical confusion. The other point that goes to, though, is what I've observed in the ethics education is the need to provide different kinds of ethics education to different employees. A big group I have left to do is police and fire. So they need different, they have different issues than other people. So part of my overall approach in these documents and in the educational materials is identifying what education different people need and really hitting on those points. But I appreciate that.
Okay. Anything else from Ms. Meadows-Keefe on this topic? That would bring us to public comment on non-agenda items. I have a card from Dr. Hollifield. Dr. Hollifield, you're recognized.
Ed Hollifield, Longleaf Court. There are a number of things that I think need to be considered by this board. Maybe there's a legal definition of ethics, and then on the other hand, a popular definition of ethics. Perhaps I lean more toward the popular definition, since I'm not a lawyer. All I can say is that there are a number of things that go down in this city that really should not. And I would say at the top of the list is Tallahassee Memorial Hospital. The hospital, created in 1948 with a city utilities tax that black people had to pay as well, and yet blacks were denied admission to that hospital. Matter of fact, TMH would rather a black person die than be admitted to that hospital. And this is all in the name of the city, because the city owned the hospital. And guess what? The city still owns the hospital. It's just that a lot of people don't know it. The city owns the land, the city owns the buildings. The city owns everything inside the buildings. Now, I wrote an article, sent a letter to the Democrat recently. I was really surprised they printed it, at least a part of it. And I described their board of directors as a country club board for a hospital that is governed by this country club board and just pure greed. Now, the city vets the members of the board. They go before the city commission. And I dare say, I think the city has completely abrogated its responsibility. Again, the hospital is owned by the city. There's not one member on the TMH board from the black community, or from a black neighborhood, or from a black census tract. No poor people on the board. To be on that TMH board, you have to be either rich or near rich. No people on Medicaid on the board. Otherwise, if there are people on Medicaid on the board, those people might have been able to tell TMH, look, you have no right to turn down people on Medicaid, which is what they're doing. People on Medicaid are denied access to the internal medicine clinic. They're denied access at TMH to the family practice clinic. And these are the people that are lucky enough to be on Medicaid. You know, they don't give Medicaid out in the state of Florida very easily. You know, the criteria are very strict. And yet, even if you manage to have Medicaid, they turn you away. And that's just unconscionable. And you might say, well, this is not an ethics concern in terms of the legal definition. But I'm saying that the city commission has provided no oversight over TMH, a complete abrogation of their responsibility. As I see it, no oversight. No oversight, for the reasons that I mentioned. And when they come before the city commission, just when the people to be so-called vetted by the city commission come before the city commission, guess what happens? They're approved by consent. And that means nobody ever talks about them. You know, they come up with a list that TMH submits. The city commission has the right, one of the few rights, to vet these people. And they don't even do that. They do it by consent. You got people on the board who, you know, you have a board of directors with people that apparently, I want to be very careful, do work on the hospital as well. Now, if that is indeed the case, then what is this concept of self-dealing all about? If a person serves on the board, they should not benefit from that board membership in a personal way. No way. So do we have to look at what's happening with Mad Dog Construction? I mean, should that situation deserve any scrutiny? You know, when you have had a long history of people from Mad Dog Construction serving on the board at TMH Hospital. So you talk about teeth regarding ethics. You might not have the power, but as I was telling Julie, and she didn't disagree, and I still love talking to Julie. She'll listen to me. But I said, well, Julie, y'all don't have no power. That's not your fault. You don't determine the ethics board and the power they have. So I'm not mad at you, but y'all could at least make recommendations. Y'all could recommend to the people at TMH that self-dealing, if that is taking place, not be a feature of that hospital. Y'all could recommend that poor people be allowed to serve on the board. People on Medicaid be allowed to serve on the board. People from the black community be allowed to serve on the board, just like people from Ox Bottom and Golden Eagle. And given the history of that hospital, that's not an extraordinary request. I don't think it's an extraordinary request. And then, when you consider what transpires in city government, just access. You know, you got CRAs giving away all this money, yet the CRA meetings are not televised. That shouldn't be the case. If you're going to give away millions of dollars, why aren't those meetings televised? I've brought this to Julie's attention on many an occasion. You televise this meeting, and very few people are even here. You televise Blueprint or whatever. You televise intergovernmental meetings or whatever. But yet, at a meeting where the CRA routinely just rapes the resources of the black community, gives it away to developers, those meetings are not even televised. Why not? Why not? And if you don't have the power to make them televised, you could at least make it a recommendation to the city commission. We're giving away millions of dollars to Ron Sachs and Doubletree Hotel. Why can't we at least, when you're going to do this kind of thing, why can't we at least televise the meetings? If you don't have the power to do it, then make it as a recommendation. You can certainly make recommendations. CRA meetings are meetings that working class people aren't even supposed to go to. How can they go to a meeting at 9:30 on a weekday morning? It's like the city commission ought to put up a sign of CRA, working class people not allowed. You don't have the power to validate parking, or so you say, but you could recommend that parking be validated. That's not beyond the scope of the ethics board. Recommend validation of parking. We only get 3 minutes anyhow. You shouldn't have to take part of that 3 minutes to go run outside and try to put money in the meter. So make it a recommendation. I know it's been a long day, so it's probably time for me to pack up and leave, but I think conflict of interest, very important. I think oversight for TMH, since you give them control of more than $500 million worth of assets with a contract, a lease agreement, in which they only have to pay $1 a year. As I pointed out in a part of my article that wasn't published, that's a good business model if you can get it. More than $500 million controlled by TMH with a contract lease agreement in which they have to pay $1 a year. So you need to look at that. Not that you can do anything about it, but you can make recommendations relative to quality. Quality at TMH has declined if you look at Leapfrog, which has gone from a rating of A to C in 3 years. Why has never been any quality audit of TMH? I don't know if TMH has been audited on any basis. I mean, you audit everything else. Why not TMH? Why is TMH off limits? Why has no one ever from the city looked into the quality of care at TMH? Now, I know you don't have any power, but you could certainly make a recommendation. You could certainly recommend to the city commission that TMH be audited just like any other institution. And that absolves you of the predicament in which you have an ethics commission with no power. But you do have the power to make recommendations. And I think that's an ability that you should consider exercising to a far greater extent than you do. Thanks a lot.
Okay, Mr. Hollifield, thank you. I think over the next couple of meetings, we are going to be going down exactly that path of making some recommendations. Keep coming back. Keep coming back. On non-agenda items,
11, did you do 11?
did I do 11? What did I skip? Mr. Butzine,
Would you mind if I made one quick
I would be more than happy to recognize you, Mr. Butzine. You could come up and arm wrestle.
No, that's not necessary. Ultimately, you are going to have the last word on this. But if I heard correctly, he said that if there were theft of city property were involved, then the mayor's action may be enforceable under the city's ethics code. And here's what I would argue. According to reports, and I can just say, according to the reports I read in the newspaper, I have no personal interest on any of this. The mayor used public funds to pay for software that provides demographic, political, and contact information on Florida voters, and it's clearly intended for candidate use. Consequently, call it what you will, I believe that he misappropriated public funds for private use. Now, call it misappropriation, call it theft. He was obviously quickly caught, and he apologized, but I don't think that absolves the Ethics Board's responsibility to investigate the case, present its findings, and ultimately, depending on those findings, determine an appropriate penalty. Now, if the oath is only aspirational, and Mr. Currington may be completely right on that, but if that's the case, then what's the point of having an oath of office? When our coalition drafted the ethics initiative, we knew that including a specific code of ethics would be inappropriate to be included in the city charter, just as statutory law doesn't belong in a constitution. But we provided the board with the power to recommend a stronger ethics code. And as I stated earlier, we're going to do everything that we can in our power to persuade the City Commission to pass an enforceable ethics code. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Butzine. The other item on our agenda is item 11, which is anything that any member of the board would like to add to a future agenda. Seeing none, I believe we are done. Anybody else have anything for the good of the order? Oh, yes, Julie reminds me, our next meeting is, I don't know what the date and time.
Tuesday, May 16th, 2017, from 4 to 7.
Thank you. And with that, we are adjourned. Oh, it's right there.
May 16th.